Okay, welcome once again. I'm going to apologize in advance if I get a little political on this one, but the movie itself is not very politically slanted. It's largely about politics, but it doesn't attack one side or the other. And that movie is Game Change, the recent HBO film about the 2008 election. And I think this, for me personally, it's the best political film ever made. It was quite simply just amazing. I was riveted and I hung on every word. Now, you don't have to be a huge political junkie, but it helps. I think, one of the reasons I like it more than any other political film is I remember this election very clearly because I was very involved and very engaged in it. And I'll say up front, I was a huge advocate for Obama, just a big supporter. I blogged about it constantly. I watched every second of the fucking news. I remember every detail in this campaign. I donated to Obama's campaign and I campaigned for him as well. So, getting that out of the way, I'm obviously not a huge fan of Republicans or, Sarah Palin or John McCain. Although I will state, and I'll stick by it, I like John McCain in a way. There's parts about him that I like, but this is a film, and it's based on a book by a reporter, a nonfiction book. I forgot the reporter's name, but he's on MSNBC all the time about that election. But from what I understand, I think this takes parts of that book and dramatizes them into a story of John McCain's campaign, and specifically the choice to make Sarah Palin his running mate for vice president. And it's kind of about the implosion of that campaign after making that choice. And how, and this is my opinion as well as I think the film's opinion, Sarah Palin was the right choice for their campaign, but she was the wrong choice for a vice president. And it was the only move they had, but it was a bad move. It ended up being a bad move. It's hard to explain, but they needed something to energize John McCain's campaign. You look at the statistics; he didn't have much of a chance against Obama with a lot of people, specifically women. So they went with Sarah Palin with very little vetting and very little time to get her prepared for what she was about to do, which is step on a national stage. And here she's this governor that nobody knows from Alaska. So she goes from nobody to the whole country knowing her and the press grilling her. She was the right play, but in the end, she was kind of the wrong move. And that's what the whole movie is all about. It's like they had no other choice but to pick her, and it seemed like a brilliant move on the surface. But the problem with Sarah Palin is she was a great performer, but she didn't know anything about anything. And I say that with no maliciousness. She didn't know things that you needed to know if you're going to be, running the country. Now, granted, the vice president's job is mostly just giving speeches and supporting the president and whatnot, but this was a very different campaign with a very, different Democratic candidate with a lot of energy behind him. And it had been 8 years of Bush, and people were sick of Bush, and they were upset with where the country was going. And John McCain, didn't poll well with women, this and that. He had major issues. And it just seemed like you could bring this girl that was a superstar, just like how Obama was a superstar. And they're both, these celebrity personalities, and it seemed like the right play. But as one of the main characters in the movie points out at one point, the difference, between Obama and Sarah Palin is she can't name a single Supreme Court case, and Obama was a constitutional law professor. So I'm not gonna try to politicize this too much. I'm just gonna say this is a really, really, really great movie. I literally hung on every word. It was just so well written. Just these great lines throughout it, and it goes from a really human perspective. I'd say your main characters are kind of Sarah Palin, who's played by Julianne Moore, and Steve Schmidt, who's played by Woody Harrelson. And Steve Schmidt, I don't think he was McCain's campaign manager. There was someone else in this movie that played him, and I forgot the guy's name in real life, and blah, blah, blah. But they bring Steve Schmidt in because I think he worked on Bush's campaigns, and he worked for the Bush administration. And Steve Schmidt, I mean, I'm pretty sure. I remember knowing that about him, and I see him on lots of news programming. But it's kind of about them. McCain brings Steve Schmidt in to help him with his campaign, and Steve Schmidt ends up being one of the, major guys that gives the thumbs up on Sarah Palin, only for it to really, there are moments where it's really good when she first comes out and she's introduced on the national stage. Everyone loves her. There's a moment later where it seems like that was the right choice, but it's mostly about this campaign falling apart because of that choice. First of all the performances in this are unbelievable. Ed Harris as McCain, he did a great job. Julianne Moore, her performance as Sarah Palin is absolutely uncanny. Like, I cannot believe how good a job she did as Sarah Palin. She plays, her public persona to perfection, and she looks just like her. Even Ed Harris kind of looked like John McCain. He looked like John McCain. And Woody Harrelson is fucking electric as Steve Schmidt. Just amazing. Like, he completely understands his role. And the moments where he gets to unleash on people and just, voice what he's really thinking, Woody Harrelson is just incredible. There's a couple scenes between Steve Schmidt and Sarah Palin where Woody Harrelson is just amazing, and he's amazing throughout it though. Like, I was just always completely into whatever he was saying. He just plays like this really smart, wise character who made a bad choice, and he's doing his best to make the situation better. God, I mean, what can I say about this movie? It was just so, it was really, really good. And beyond, like I said, it's not a political movie. It's not saying John McCain and Sarah Palin were the bad guys and Obama was the good guy and he's the one that should have won, or this and that. If anything, Obama's the bad guy in it, or the villain. He's like the villain in the background. They don't go into Obama's campaign at all. I think the book did. I think the book did a lot, but Jay Roach, the director here, was smart enough to pick out what was the most interesting story out of this campaign from a dramatic perspective and make a movie about that. And just a side note on Jay Roach, I mean, I'm really surprised by this guy. He does Meet the Fockers, or what was the original one? Meet the Parents. And he's done the sequels to that. And he did some other comedy that I didn't think was that good. But he's done 2 films for HBO where I'm just like, this guy needs to be making these serious dramas all the time. Like, he's great at them. He did Recount as well for HBO. And Recount, I wasn't blown away by it like this, though. This was really fucking good. But anyways, I mean, if you're conservative, you might be like, oh, I don't want to go see a Sarah Palin bashing movie for, 2 hours. I don't feel it was a Sarah Palin bashing movie. I feel Sarah Palin is like a lot of people, and they say this in the movie too. She doesn't know a lot about, foreign policy, or she might not be able to name Supreme Court cases. Most people don't. I don't hold that against her. It's just that she was the wrong choice. She doesn't. You have to know those things. Um, I mean, there are elements of this that kind of make her out to be the villain. I'll be honest, because she has major problems taking direction, or she starts to have a meltdown in the middle of this, and this is all based on reported stuff where she just was unresponsive. She's not willing to like sit there and actually learn the stuff that they wanted to teach her, and she started to be like, I'm going to do my own thing because I'm a bigger star than McCain, and fuck you, you know. And she kind of does this in this movie, and you're like, God, I hate her a little bit, but at the same time, you really kind of sympathize with her because she's just a normal person who is actually very skilled as a political actor, and that's gotten her as far as she has, and it got her as far as to being a potential vice president of the United States, but she's completely unqualified for that role. But that doesn't make her a bad person. The movie really takes its time to humanize her, and I think if you're being objective about it, she didn't have the knowledge for what she was, being put up for. Like, if you can't name what newspaper you read or whatever, that's not a gotcha question. And the film becomes about, Steve Schmidt and these other guys running the campaign discovering that she really doesn't know anything, and they're like, dear God, and they're trying to help her and stuff, but she starts to implode under the pressure from the media and from, being on that big stage, right? And it's just, it does it so well. And if anything, yeah, I mean, it portrays their campaign in a bad light, but it's a factual light. And if anything, it made me like John McCain more. I always kind of liked the guy, but they really, like, Ed Harris plays him as likable as possible. Just a very nice, wise guy who, knows politics and this and that, but like, they make a big point about how he didn't want to run a dirty campaign and do stuff about Reverend Wright. And I remember back in that 2008 election, I was very much against McCain, but I was like, this guy has some character. He's not afraid to stand up and say what he thinks. For instance, his view on the whole waterboarding and stuff. Like, he's like, that's torture and that's not right. It doesn't help. And this is coming. If anyone knows, it's McCain. He wasn't afraid to stand up to his party and say stuff like that. And that's why I always kind of respected about him. But then, as the campaign went on, I mean, for one, I was completely loyal and I wanted Obama to win. But also, this campaign went on, I felt more strongly about it because McCain started to run dirty ads because he got desperate. He picked Sarah Palin, and it seemed like a very cheap move in order to win. And then when it came to the financial collapse of, the recession that we're in right now, the collapse of 2008, that's when, like, the final nail was in the coffin. If Palin didn't do it to them already, once the campaign became about the economy, I like McCain, but that's not a strong suit, and that's not Republicans' strong suit either. They like to pretend it is, but it isn't. They like to pretend they know everything about business and running, everything. Yeah, they run it right into the fucking ground. And I remember, they had ads, they had footage of McCain saying, oh, the economy's not my strong suit. And it wasn't his strong suit. And once that happened, he was completely fucked. And it sure as hell wasn't Sarah Palin's strong suit, right? So that was it. By that point, between Palin and the economy, McCain was completely done for. But Palin paid a big part of that, and it wasn't really Palin's fault. It was McCain and his campaign. And this movie just does a great job of exploring what it was like for them to go through. They're the protagonists, McCain and Steve Schmidt, and even Palin to a degree. But Palin just couldn't handle it. She wasn't ready for it. She wasn't prepared. She couldn't handle it. She's, made to be a celebrity. And I guess that's the difference between Obama and Palin. Obama quickly achieved celebrity status, but he was qualified for the job as well. He's what you want out of a president in a way. well-spoken, smart, articulate, a leader. Get people to get excited about him. He has a vision. And Palin, she had a lot of those qualities, but she didn't have the base, the knowledge. All right, that's what this movie goes into. And you could say that then it's politically skewed towards the Democrats. I think the movie's pretty objective. It's going for the drama in this, the drama of McCain losing his reputation over choosing someone that he thinks could help him win, the drama over Sarah Palin going into this completely unprepared for it, but facing it with a lot of bravery and doing pretty damn good considering she's so unprepared, right? And Steve Schmidt, making this call on a campaign for a VP, and it ending up being the despite it seemed like the right move at the time, it was the wrong call. And the movie does it just so well. If you like good dialogue-driven movies, you're gonna love this movie. Yeah. So, and if obviously, if you're into politics, that's gonna help. But even if you just kind of remember the campaign and the way things played out, I remember it very well. And this movie just did it very. Like, I kept thinking, like, man, they're like ragging how bad Palin is. I'm like, I wonder when they get to the Joe Biden debate, whether they're gonna show that she came out pretty good in that. Like, I remember seeing the debate. I'm sorry. I remember seeing the debate myself between her and Joe Biden. Going, Joe Biden won that clearly, but the entire media was like, I don't know. I think Sarah Palin kind of won. And you think about it, it's like she didn't win. Okay, Biden knew his shit, and she didn't. But Sarah Palin came out, and she was actually good compared to the one-on-one interviews you've seen of her. She gave a great performance. But it was so surprising that she wasn't as terrible as you thought she was going to be, that the whole media was like, wow, she blew it out of, she knocked it out of the park. And then that happened in the movie too. Like everyone on the King campaign sitting there going, whoa, holy crap, she's amazing. She nailed it. I was like, this movie remembers like all these little things that happened throughout. And it just, if you remember that election at all, you're going to really enjoy this movie. If you're into politics, you're going to love this movie. And if you're into strong dialogue-driven dramas, even if you're not into the politics, I think you're going to at least like this movie quite a bit. So it should be no surprise for you. Big 5 out of 5 stars for Game Change. Definitely going to be on my top 10 list for 2012. So I've gone on very long about this. I hope I was articulate enough to try and explain why I really liked it. I probably just rambled on, but that's how it goes. Like I said, you really need to see Game Change any way you can. If you have to get HBO Go, if you have to wait for the DVD, I'm sorry, but you gotta see Game Change. It's a very, very good movie. Very great performances, very great dialogue, great drama, and excellent reporting of politics. So I hope you take my advice, and I hope you like the movie. If you've seen it, let me know what you thought. Until next time, thanks for watching.